This is the typed interview of Alisha Owens.
Which interview?
This is going to be interview number 2 that Gary did.
Okay.
Yes. The first, I don't know if he even typed anything on the first interview. He might have. Marissa's over there just banging stuff around. What are you eating?
A cough drop.
Oh. Well, should we get started?
Yeah.
Get this thing going.
See, now I forget where we even left off.
So,
Hey, before we start, hand me that book over there.
Oh, this book?
Yeah. I'm going to thumb
The
through it.
Franklin Scandal.
Yeah, I'm going to thumb
By
through
Nick Bryant.
it. Yeah. I actually finished the audiobook on it.
Did you? Mm-hmm. Was it good?
Yeah.
I haven't finished it. I haven't finished that one either. There's so much in there. I've gone through a lot of the back. So in the back of the, we're already recording, right? Okay. So in the back of the Franklin Scandal book by Nick Bryant, something you don't get with the audiobook, at least I don't believe, if you finished it, is a lot of the documentation throughout the case. And actually, there's a lot of stuff in there that isn't, I don't think, directly with the Franklin Scandal. It's maybe like, what would you say? There's maybe a connection, but it's not really directly with that particular case or the particular court case that we're going to be talking about. But it pertains in a way, maybe.
I don't know what you're trying to say.
I don't know what I'm trying to say either.
I have no idea what you're trying to say.
Yeah, it's but anyways, there's a bunch of information in the back of the book, and it's documentation from whether it be Gary Caradori or some of the senators on the Franklin Committee.
Yeah, it's basically his evidence that he found to corroborate the story, the tale that we're telling, the conspiracy.
So basically, it's all of his reference material.
Right.
So, but so I think where we left off last time was just kind of an overview of what the Franklin Scandal or the Franklin cover-up, what it's about. Mm-hmm. And we talked about how it started with the investigation into the Franklin Credit Union.
Yep.
That dealt with some embezzling by Lawrence King, who was the president, I believe, or the manager of the credit union. And as that was going on, it split off into another investigation, which had to do with child trafficking. And that actually started when the Foster Care Review Board.
Right.
I believe they turned over some documents to the Nebraska legislature. They began their own investigation, and they hired their own investigator.
Yep.
So, anyways, that kind of leads us into today. So the investigator that they hired was Gary Caradori, private investigator out of Omaha, Nebraska. And we're going to talk about Alisha Owens today, which is one of the witnesses / victims that was interviewed by Gary. Mm-hmm. So Gary had already been investigating, where he'd already started his investigation. And do you know, is it real clear on how he actually got Alisha Owens' names? I know he heard it on the streets, so to say, but I don't know exactly where he heard it from. Now, according to the grand jury, he heard it from another journalist or a journalist. And his name's in the back of that book, and I can't remember it off the top of my head.
The Rodriguez,
no,
that one?
No. You'll see in that book that there's like a handwritten letter.
Oh, are you talking Casey?
Yes, Casey. Mm-hmm. Now that's according to the grand jury, which we'll ultimately get into that fiasco as well. But so anyways, he interviews Alisha Owens. Now, Alisha at the time is in a women's reformatory in York. And I believe that she's in there for bad checks. Is that
Yes.
the case?
Yes.
Okay.
So, yeah, and the way now, it's been a week or two since because I started researching just doing Alisha Owens. And of course, it's been a couple of weeks now. And so now my memory is going to fail me. But it's my understanding that she was getting money from one of these perpetrators, and I can't remember which one. It was either Robert Wadman or Alan Bear. They were paying for her apartment, and they were putting money in her account. And she was writing checks. Well, then they cut her off and didn't tell her, and so then she ended up having these bad checks floating around.
Okay. Oh, well, yeah. So anyways, Gary interviews her actually twice. The first interview was on October 30th. It was in 1989. And that interview was like 2 or 3 hours. And I think that's when she first began kind of discussing, I think she described it as some pornographic and sexual activity that she was involved with various people, including Alan Bear, Harold Anderson, Robert Wadman. I'm not sure if during that interview she mentioned Larry King. I don't know. And I'm looking at just these notes here, and I don't see that name pop up. But regardless, Gary decides he wants to do a second interview, and he wants to do a taped interview. And so he returns then again on November 7th of 89 to do that. And this next interview was long, and it was like 10 or 12 hours. Mm-hmm. I think I got the times highlighted here. It started at 11:30 a.m., and it was terminated at 10 p.m.
Wow.
Yeah. And he did state that, they took various small breaks, and they even had to move rooms a couple times because of other prisoners in the facility. But how do we want to start this? Do we just want to talk about Alisha and her involvement? Because that's basically what that interview entails.
Well, yeah, I think we can start the way how Alisha was introduced to this whole saga. And the way she tells her story is that she was invited to a party. I believe by a boy she met that was from Boys Town.
Yes.
She met him at, I don't know if it was after school thing. I can't remember where she actually met him, or if it was, I can't remember, but then invited her to this party. And then he and Troy Bonner picked her up, took her to Larry King's, is it the Towers?
It was the Towers.
Yeah.
It was Jeff Hubble and Troy Bonner.
Yeah. Took her to this party at Larry King's house where she was introduced to all of this activity.
Yeah, and some of the names that she brought up at that party was Larry King, Bob Wadman, Alan Bear, Harold Anderson, somebody named Chris, several minors, a friend of Troy Bonner's who was also from Boys Town, Elisa. So there were several people.
Mm-hmm. Lisa is that Webb. She is Lisa Webb. She was one of the foster children.
Oh, yes, because it does say Lisa, unidentified black female.
Yeah.
And then another white female as well. Just an interesting note is...
And I think maybe they also got information on Alisha, too, because Lisa Webb was... Like, they were the ones that were going to the social workers and complaining of the abuse. And I think they actually are the ones that were naming some of the other kids that were involved.
Yeah, so that's something as I read through her interview, and I get that ultimately Alisha was the one that was convicted of perjury by a grand jury. But I did find it interesting is you're going through her statement to Gary that she brings up names of people where how would she even get these names?
Right.
Because these are names of people, that particular name being one of them, Lisa. If it's the same Lisa, would be a kid who had made a complaint to the Foster Care Review Board, who ultimately turned over the complaints that they had to the legislature. So it's funny how she would know all of these people if she just made the whole thing up.
Right.
I mean, that doesn't even make sense.
I know.
But
yeah.
anyways.
And it wasn't like she was in a social ring or her parents were in a social ring with all of these prominent businessmen either. I mean, as far as I knew, the Owens were middle class, I think educators. Is that right? They started their own school is what I read.
I'm not even sure they were from Omaha. Don't quote me. I was thinking they were from another
smaller town.
Yeah, and it might be a town that was a suburb of Omaha. But yeah, I mean, I don't understand how she would come up with the list of names that she did, because we're not talking about 4 or 5 people here. You know, we're talking, I think if you go through it, you're probably 20 plus people.
Right.
And the other thing that's interesting is this isn't the only person that Gary interviews. He goes on to interview at least 3 other victims, which I had their names written down, but there was Paul Benaki.
Paul Benassi.
Benassi, is that how it's pronounced?
I think it's Benassi. Well, that's the way, because listening to audiobook, that's how he pronounces the name. So, Troy Bonner.
Yep, and Danny King, I believe. And at least I read through Paul's interview, and they talk about a lot of the same people. And so,
whereas in the actual, and I'm skipping, but in the actual trial, the prosecutors swear that Paul and Alisha didn't even know each other.
We'll be right back.
Not only are many trying to remove us from our constitutionally limited Judeo-Christian ethos republic, more seem to be forgetting our Judeo-Christian Christitutionalist foundations. Not here at Christitutionalist, we talk about all these things: the past, the present, the future. Biblical community, Judeo-Christian ethos, the whole Bible, biblical community, not worldly communism. And there is a big difference. Join us, Christitutionalists.
yeah. Which, to me, okay, well, that makes her more credible. Because if they don't even know each other, how do they tell such...
And how did they come up?
Story.
And if they didn't know each other, how did they come up with a carefully crafted hoax of the whole thing?
Using all the same names. They all made up the same names.
And they don't know each other. Like, the whole thing just stunk to high heaven.
Yeah. So, but anyway, she starts off with, in 1983, she meets these kids from... some of them from Boys Town, and they go to the party at the Twin Towers, where there's all of these other prominent people, adults and children alike, attending. And at that party, I think, is where she first notices that things are a little weird. And she was told, I think, beforehand that there was going to be drugs at the party, probably alcohol at the party. I don't think that she thought that she was going to a party that was like, we're going to watch movies, eat popcorn, and everybody's going to wear their pajamas. I think she understood that there was, it's going to be like a teenage party.
Right.
So, But she gets to the party, and I'm assuming that she's a little bit surprised on the activity that she sees, because there's a lot of sexual activity, and the sexual activity involves adults and kids. As a matter of fact, one of the games that they talk about that they played was called the 501 game. So for those that aren't familiar with 501 genes, it's where they would use their toes or their mouths or whatnot to undo somebody else's pants.
Oh, boy.
I've never played the 501. Have you played the 501?
No,
Marissa?
I have never heard of the 501, so
I
I was
haven't either, so-
sitting here being intrigued.
Oh, wow.
So, and I'm from Omaha, and this wasn't a game we played at the parties I went to.
Jeez.
Thank God, I guess. But anyway, so that's the sort of activity.
So how did you learn of the 501 game?
From
Was in the
Alisha
report,
Owens.
in the interview.
Yeah. Like I didn't have I played like, God dang, what was the game with the board with the Operation? That's the game that I played. I hate that game. Did you ever play that game?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I just swore I was going to get shocked every time that thing buzzed. Just scared the shit out of me.
Well, it doesn't shock you. It just buzzes, doesn't it?
Why no? No, it doesn't shock you. My
It's-
God, it's a kid's game.
I was going to say, obviously, ours didn't
Your
do that.
parents rigged up a hell of an operation game.
But anyways, so yeah, and she continued to.
And I think, I don't know, maybe you're getting to this, but I think, so initially at this party, I don't think she did anything or they made her do anything at this initial party, but they kind of used it as blackmail and was like, we're going to tell your parents that you were out at this drug party.
And I think you're correct. I don't think that she was
Participating in initially. Yeah. And then,
not to the extent that the other kids were.
yeah. And then they used that, like I said, to blackmail her. And then they would get her, going to these subsequent parties. And then that's eventually when she started to be abused.
I think now at the first party, I think that might have been maybe when she alleges that Robert Wadman, who happens to be the chief of police of Omaha, first kind of showed an interest in her, though.
Right.
I don't know if it was maybe it was a second or a third party where she began to talk about him really coming on to her and touching her and touching her breasts and making comments. And I think maybe that's when maybe she got involved with the 501 game with Wadman. And I think ultimately he had her perform oral sex on her. I think that was before the dress anyway. It was, because then he promised to buy her a dress.
I don't know
that
anything
part?
about that.
Okay. So he had promised to buy her a dress, and he was going to pick her up at school. So...
Oh, yes, I do know about that. Anyway, Go on.
So anyways, yeah. So then she says that he did, in fact, pick her up at school and takes her to a place that becomes kind of a common place that they hang out, which is the French Cafe.
Which was owned by Larry King.
Yep. So she had gone and let me back up a little bit. He had told her what store to go to pick out a dress.
Yeah.
And the way it sounds, at least in her interview, is she doesn't actually go and pick it out and take it. She picks it out and basically puts her name on it. And then he picks her up. They end up at this French Cafe, and he has the dress, and he wants her to try it on. And so they end up going down into the basement of this place. And the staff is there, and they obviously see what's going on, at least according to Alisha. And she tries it on, and I think he comments at that time on how he really liked looking at her naked, though. So anyways, in the basement of this place, he has her undress. And it's kind of gross, but, well, it's all gross. He then takes his pants down and masturbates on her. And she alleges that she never did wash the dress and that her DNA would then still be on it.
His
DNA. And just in her interview, she doesn't talk about this like that she enjoys it either. So I think she's scared.
Right. And like I said, I think he coerced her, used blackmail on her, and that kept her quiet. Sure.
And of course, we're talking about adults and kids.
Yeah.
And so she's like a 14-year-old little girl at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a chief of police.
Yeah.
So I don't even think he would have to come out and make a direct threat. I think the fact that he's a chief of police, he's an adult, she's a 14-year-old girl, is scary enough. He doesn't have to come out and verbally say, I'll do this if you say this. I think that there's probably a little bit of, at least in the kid's mind, that they're just assuming that if I run my mouth, I'm going to be in trouble.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. And not only obviously you're afraid of getting in trouble from your parents too, you know?
Sure. She describes how she cried during this. And actually during the, what was going on in the basement, she actually kind of jumped back when he was doing what he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And this made him mad. And I don't know if he grabbed and pulled on her, raised his voice, but she did describe that, excuse me, that she could tell that he was angry.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't like the fact that she jumped back. And so obviously she's scared of this guy.
Sure. Which I think he was kind of a big guy too, wasn't he? Wasn't he a tall guy?
That I don't know.
Yeah. And so, in her interview, she also said that they would all often frequent the Satellite Hotel or motel. Do you remember the Satellite Motel in Omaha?
I don't.
It's that round one. That I remember it because I would drive past it on my way down to 36th and L. You drive past the Satellite Lounge or Satellite Motel. It's the round one.
It's on L Street?
I'm pretty sure because I would drive by it when I would go visit Cindy, and you would see the Satellite Motel. I'm pretty sure it's a round one.
I guess I don't. For some reason.
We'll have to pull a picture.
Yeah. Maybe Marissa can look that up and.
Say, I don't.
Yeah, and so and he would she would skip school. Like she would, where'd she go to school? Did she go to school where
I can't remember if she said it was Central.
I don't remember.
For some reason, Central pops into my head, and I don't know if that's.
I think you're right
true,
because because she talked about going to football games because, yeah. Anyway, I guess my point is that she would often skip school or leave school to meet him, and he would take her to the hotel.
And at least so far as I think her involvement, I think that she was, at one time she talked about how she had sex with, maybe it was Troy Bonner, I believe.
Well, Troy was her boyfriend.
Was he?
Yeah. She said that Troy, so after they would go to this party, then her and Troy actually started dating. So Troy was her boyfriend.
But I think so far as the group of people, so far as, Lawrence King and Wadman and.
Yeah, it's that round one.
Gosh, why do I not recognize that? Where's that located at?
Dun, 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 dun.
6006 L Street.
Bang, bang, bang. Told ya.
Well, I guess I'll have to check that out next time. But
Yep.
anyways, of all the adults at the party, she seemed to have more of her involvement seemed to be more with Wadman. than anybody. I think that she did things with other people, but primarily,
I think Bear.
Wadman.
Yeah, Bear. I think she had a relationship with him, but I think Bear kind of preferred boys.
Yep, I think that's what she alleged.
And I think Larry King also preferred boys.
Yeah, because who was it? She talked about how Troy Bonner seemed to have the relationship. Was that with Bear?
That was with Bear.
Was it with Bear?
Alan Bear, yeah.
And she talked about Anderson as well. And I can't remember who Anderson seemed to be involved with. And then Peter Citron was another name that was also at the party. Of course, everybody knows by now that Larry King would have been the president of the bank, but Peter Citron was with the Omaha World Herald. Harold Anderson, I think, was also with the Omaha World Herald. Alan Bear I think he was a business owner. He might have had several businesses. I think he would primarily buy a business that was maybe failing and then build the business back up, possibly sell it off. But he was another wealthy individual. And then also, I think the owner of the French Cafe, I don't know if it was the owner or manager of the French Cafe.
It was the manager, because the owner was Larry King, but the manager lived upstairs.
Okay.
And she was the one that kind of kept things hush-hush.
Yeah, it was kind of like their other meeting place besides the Twin Towers in Omaha.
Yeah.
The Twin Towers is another place I guess I can't seem to picture either.
I don't know where that
I don't
where that
either.
is.
Every time I think of that, I think of that tower apartment building in Grand Island for some reason, but I don't know
either.
But anyways, as she would continue to attend these parties with Troy and also with Hubble, and things would just escalate. And I think at one time she mentioned that there was a book of photographs, because while she was attending these parties and there was sexual acts going on between, of course, children and children, which there was photography involved. So there was a photographer also there taking pictures and maybe some video as well. There would be pornographic movies on, I'm assuming, a TV. But there would be activity between kids, between adults and kids. There would be homosexual activity going on. And then, of course, her activity
and
mostly with what seemed to be Bob Wadman.
Yeah, and she even described to the point that, some of this stuff would be going on in back rooms, and she said it got to the point where sometimes they were just doing stuff in the middle of the living room in front of everybody.
Yeah, and photographing it. I'm assuming video. I'm not sure about the video. I thought somebody mentioned something about video, but maybe that was just what they were watching on TV.
Sick.
But it would get to where I think Bob would pick her up and they would go to different places too. Council Bluffs, I believe, was a place that she mentioned. He would take her to hotels and also, I don't even know what they would have sex, where there would be sexual acts. And I don't know if a lot of these sexual acts, I think, were more of oral. That's the way it seems to be. Now, I think that they did have intercourse.
Yeah.
But the way she described it, I think a lot of the activity that went on was oral type sex activities.
Right. Well, and then in 1985, she gets pregnant.
Yes.
And so her claim is that Bob Wadman is the father of her baby. So by this point, she's already implicated him, and there is, it's out now that there's this activity going on, because I believe that they had done a blood test on this baby prior to, I don't know what year this would have been, but I think prior to, obviously, this interview. I'm not sure what year, but she had her baby in 85.
I don't know did they ever make the results known of that test?
No. So That's what came up in the trial. So in the actual trial, she's claiming that he is the father of her baby. The prosecutor claims that, well, we had a DNA test on your child and he's not the father. However, they neglected to submit the results into evidence. So I'm sure that was on purpose. So now them just claiming he's not the father doesn't actually prove that he's not the father because nothing was ever submitted into evidence.
Something else that she talks about is this wasn't the type of activity they were involved with Robert Wadman and with Larry King wasn't just in Omaha. So they would be flown out as well, either to California. And then she also described trips to Washington, D.C. And I'm pretty sure that she brought up that there was tours of the White House as well. But
yeah, they were flown to D.C. for these political parties that happened to be at, well, first of all, Larry King had a townhouse or something.
Yeah, I think
or an apartment or something in D.C.
Yeah, rent was like $5,000 a month.
There was also a gentleman by the name of Craig Spence who also had a house in D.C. And so they would either be either at Larry King's apartment or whatever it is, I'm not sure, or this Craig Spence's house, who threw many political parties. And her claim was that, yeah, they would fly these kids down to D.C. for these I shouldn't say political parties, but these parties where politicians were attending and engaging in these sex acts with these kids.
And I was trying to remember I don't know if she specifically mentioned Craig's name. However, I don't know if it would even be necessary because she's talking about how she's being flown out to D.C., her and other kids, for these parties. Meanwhile, at the same time, Craig Spence later on is also investigated. And one of the people that's supplying adult prostitutes to Craig Spence states that Craig Spence had asked him for minors, which he refused to provide. He also mentioned that he attended one of those parties at Craig Spence's, and he met Larry King there. Mm-hmm. Weird. So, I mean, it would make sense
that there's
Larry King. He's not being provided the child prostitutes that he wants, but Larry King can provide them.
Yep.
And so that's an interesting.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think Alisha was ever privy to Craig Spence. I don't know that she ever. I don't think she ever interacted with Craig Spence. Craig Spence was definitely involved with the gay prostitutes. So he would be involved in procuring the men for the parties. But like you said, the kids, no. So I can see where her being a child and a female, Craig probably didn't, he probably wasn't around.
Sure, but
I don't know.
To me, as I'm going through it, it makes her story a little more credible.
Yeah.
Because how would she just out of the blue make up, while I was hanging out with Larry King and his crew, he would fly us out to Washington, D.C., and we would take tours of the White House, and lo and behold, Larry King does have ties to Washington, D.C. He does have a townhouse there. Mm-hmm. He does have an affiliation with Craig Spence. Mm-hmm. He's seen with Craig Spence. Weird.
Yeah.
And how would she know that?
Yeah.
So she also mentions the trips out to California where they would make stops in Denver or wherever. I think trips to, I believe she said Kansas City. But all for the same thing. They all ultimately ended up with almost like sex parties with minors and adults. Mm-hmm. And she wasn't the only one that would go. other kids would travel with them.
Sure. Right. Because, and that was one of the kids that was actually a victim too in this. And I don't think it was the web girl. I think it was a different one that said that, you know, she was flown quite often. And I don't remember which one it was. Elise Washington maybe would be the one. But I don't know for sure. But yeah, she, you know, so obviously it seems like it was majority boys, but they did have their handful of girls that they would fly out to.
Well, yeah.
So
I think it seems to be, it's whatever, maybe what a customer wanted.
whatever their client wants.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yeah. So, you know, ultimately, I guess if people aren't quite sure what trial we're talking about, you know, this pedophile ring comes up for investigation, and of course he's interviewing the victims. They ultimately, who is the one that is actually, I don't want to say suing, but actually claims that they are all perjuring themselves?
I think
is it the credit union itself, or is it the state of Nebraska, or who is it that actually says, no, these victims are lying and committing perjury by saying all of these prominent people are abusing them and running this pedophile ring?
I believe it's the FBI and also local authorities. So they're the ones that I think at the same time. So there's multiple investigations going on at the same time. There's the legislature that is doing their investigation. There's also the FBI doing their investigation. And I think that the FBI, possibly the Nebraska State Patrol, and local law enforcement, they're the ones that I think ultimately flip this around from the adults being in trouble to the only people, and mind you, Larry King does go to trial, but it ain't for this.
No.
He goes to court for the embezzlement.
Embezzling, yeah.
The only people that go to court, actually the only person that ends up going to court is Alisha Owens. But initially, they were coming after Alisha, Troy Bonner, Paul Benassi, and maybe Danny King. I'm not sure about Danny.
True. Well, so...
But they all recant their stories, ultimately. She's the only one that does not.
Paul Benassi did not either. However, the way I understand it is hers was first, and they called her a liar and convicted her of perjury. And then when it was Paul's turn, basically because of this trauma and abuse, he is now diagnosed with this multiple personality disorder, dissociative identity disorder, whatever you want to call it. And he's not found credible. And I think they, if I'm not mistaken, dismiss it or something to that effect.
That could be.
Because they can't find him credible because of his mental illness.
I do know that she's the only one convicted, and I think they also allege that she's kind of the ringleader of this, what they claim to be a big BS story.
Hoax, yeah.
A hoax. Mm-hmm. An elaborate hoax.
Crazy. And at this point, when she's, well, the abuse is happening when she's 14. So they're claiming she's coming up with this story. I think she's 19 now when she's on trial. Is that
1920, something like that. The trial's in 1990. If she's 14
even
in 83.
were you smart enough at 19 to come up with this elaborate hoax with all these prominent people? And
so do I think that could an individual come up with an elaborate story? Yes. Do I think 4 people could come up with the same story? Probably not. Probably not. But the other thing with her story, and when I go through the notes from the grand jury, so much is left out. Like there's very little of the actual story in that trial.
So one misconception that I had about a grand jury is what a grand jury actually means. And it is not what I thought it meant. You think a grand jury, you hear those words, you think, okay, it's the biggest, most important jury that you're ever going to face. And it's like the most important trial and everything's going to be legit. And, you know, it's the say all be all and everything is like it is on TV. And no, it's not. The grand jury is basically this group of people, this group of jurors that are in a courtroom listening to the prosecutor badger a witness with nobody else around. Her lawyer's not there. There's no judge there, I don't even think. There's nobody there to help this poor witness defend herself. It's basically the special prosecutor badgering, and he can say anything he wants, and there's nobody there that can object to it.
Yeah, it's different than what
it's different than what
any case.
Yeah, way different. And then also, you know, he can submit whatever information or evidence he wants, or he can omit any evidence he wants.
You know, one of the funny things
and so it's very skewed. It's bullshit. So when I hear grand jury from now on, I'm thinking, oh well, that's a crock.
Yeah,
I'm not going to put any.
Typically, now when you hear a grand jury will indict somebody to go to trial.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit confused when I look at the grand jury conviction of Alisha, because I keep thinking, well, wouldn't there be a normal court with a normal jury and a judge and a defense and a prosecution? But for this particular case, there really doesn't seem to be. And maybe
there wasn't.
Maybe I'm missing something. But
no, there wasn't. Well, this was the good thing about listening to the audiobook, is because I got to hear him describe all of it and what it was like in that courtroom, according to what was happening. And and Nick Bryant, he interviewed Alisha. He also interviewed Henry Rosenthal, I think that's his name. That was her lawyer. And he, he got the information of how it actually went down. And basically the special prosecutor, which was a Sam Van Pelt, called her a liar, like badgered her, called her a liar, said she was making everything up. There was nobody to help her. It was basically like just throwing her up against the firing squad with nobody to help defend her.
One thing that I found funny is when I'm reading the grand jury documentation, they would say things like, well, she alleged that Bob Wapman forced her to have sex, whether it be oral or whatnot. But we asked Bob, and he said no.
See? Yeah, exactly.
Like he's going to come out and say, well, okay,
exactly.
you got me
and
there.
Yeah, and just everything. And, you think about a 19-year-old girl, and I'm going to say just, the fact that she's female, to me, would be a little intimidated. Plus the fact that you're still technically a teenager. And then to be badgered on the stand like that and no way to defend herself, you would think that she would cave. I would cave. But she did not. She never wavered in her story. She never She never changed anything about her story, and she held strong. And she's like, "No, I'm telling the truth."
They seem to pick on some really, like fine details, which is common in court. They do kind of really pick on the details. But one thing to remember is nobody has like I shouldn't say nobody. People really don't generally have a photographic memory. So your memory can change over time, and they may not accurately 100%, remember the details as they happen. But in general, they give you an idea of what actually did happen. But it seemed to me they would always pick on these fine details and completely overlook what happened in general. They also didn't seem to really bother with the fact that there was some corroborating details. Like, for instance, earlier when we talked about the fact that she would talk about these flights out to Washington, D.C. Well, weird. He has a house there. So, go ahead.
I think the jury was highly influenced and pressured by the judge, though, from what I'm reading.
Probably not only them, but you're also talking about
Well, and not to. I guess I'm going to mention there was two courts, one with the grand jury, and then the second one, which had that judge. What was his name?
I don't know if this one is telling me the judge's
Carlson
name right off.
The first
Judge Carlson is the one that she alleged was involved with.
That was the first judge who also abused her, who also had sex with her.
That could be, but also imagine you're a grand jury or you're a jury member, and you have this one 19-year-old who's saying, hey, all of these people abuse me. But the only other people they really bring in are the adult saying basically, no, I didn't. Mm-hmm. And then you have, of course, the FBI is stating, well, they conducted their investigation. We didn't find anything, but I don't think, and mind you, by this time, Gary Caradori is deceased. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure he would have been allowed in there anyway, but she didn't have much of a defense.
No.
So it was kind of her against everybody.
Right. Yeah. And is it Judge Carr? Was that the second one? I don't know. Sorry, I got on sidetracked.
No, that's all right.
But yeah, the first judge that was over here or overseeing this.
Well, Judge Theodore Carlson, I think, is the one I have on the board.
Right.
So he would have been one of the people involved with, according to her, the whole, what would you call it, the sex trafficking or these parties.
Right. Yeah, she accused him of being one of her abusers also.
Sure.
And I think he was in charge of the grand jury testimony or the grand jury court case. So then she goes to actual trial then, because there's two. There's the grand jury one and then there's the actual.
The grand jury is typically who indicts.
Okay,
yeah.
So then her second court case or her second court is, I think, Carr. I could be, I think his name was Judge Carr, but maybe not. I could be making that up. Cannoli.
So say they just keep saying the judge.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm looking at
he was
that was from the 91, June 19th stuff, Mike.
He was highly corrupt, and he would not. This is a judge that when the Henry Rosenthal was her lawyer, because mind you, she did not start off with him. She started off with an appointed lawyer by the name of Pamela Buttigieg or something like that. And she initially said that she was going to do all she could to help the victims in this. And then as it went on, she ends up having an affair with the lead investigator of the FBI. So lo and behold, now all of a sudden, this lawyer that was assigned to her doesn't want to defend her.
I guess I need to clarify something. The case I'm looking at is the 1993. I think it's in the Court of Appeals, and that's where this Judge Cannoli is. And I don't.
Okay, yeah, I think it's Judge Carr.
This is from 91. Let me see if it says.
Yeah, I'm looking at
September.
93. So
Anyway,
Cannoli, Judge Cannoli.
was that 91?
For the one? Yeah, for the one that I'm looking at.
Yeah, and I'm looking at 1993. Maybe it would be the same judge. That would seem odd, but
I think no.
I don't think it would be the same judge. But maybe you and I are looking at the same case, and 93 is how long it.
What I'm reading, it says the jury commenced deliberation at 9 a.m. on June 19th, 1991, and continued deliberating until evening recess at 4:30 p.m. One of the jurors stated that the trial judge entered the jury room prior to evening recess on June 19th to admonish the jurors concerning their separation. The affiant claimed that at the time, although an instruction on the term reasonable doubt had been given to the jury, the judge was asked for further definition of the term. The affiant stated that the judge responded to the request for further definition of reasonable doubt by stating that what is a reasonable doubt is to be left up to each individual juror. And then they went to, they were done for the night. And then the affiant stated that several jurors, while at home on the evening of June 19th, consulted dictionaries for definitions of the words reasonable and doubt, wrote down the definitions, brought the dictionary definitions with them into the jury room when deliberations were resumed on the morning of June 20th, and recited the definition to the follower jurors. Deliberations on June 20th continued until approximately noon. At that time, according to another of the juror affiants, the jury foreman informed the bailiff that the jury had reached an impasse and was unable to agree on a verdict. The affiant believed that the bailiff had communicated this information to the judge. The affiant stated that the bailiff returned to the jury room and verbally communicated a message from the judge that considering the length of the trial, it is too early to process for the jurors to abandon the effort to reach a verdict.
Okay, I just found in the book, the judge's name was Carlson. So Carlson was in charge of both the grand jury and her actual trial, which they thought that was odd, that it would be the same judge.
Okay.
And he was the corrupt judge who basically sustained all of the objections from Henry Rosenthal. And basically, you want to talk about a corrupt court hearing, it's this one. We thought Karen Reed's was.
Which, wouldn't that be a mistrial? If the jurors are saying we can't come to
it'd be a hung jury.
a hung jury.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So she would
therefore,
not be charged, correct?
That's correct. So it would be a mistrial.
Yes.
And then,
So they were very pushed, I would say, by this judge.
yeah. And I think that the problem, it's easy for me to know what proof beyond a reasonable doubt is. And it kind of is in the name. It's proof beyond, like, what could be reasonable to doubt that a person is guilty. But, this is also coming from somebody that was in law enforcement. So I kind of have a pretty good idea because you spend a lot of time in classroom going over just that. You have arrest, search, and seizure. You have courtroom procedure. You have, reasonable. You go over reasonable suspicion. You go over probable cause. You go over proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, your average everyday person who, maybe works a regular job, I think if they ask a judge, well, we kind of need, what would define reasonable doubt. I think that a judge should probably at least make an attempt to explain what reasonable doubt is. So is there a reasonable explanation on why?
Well, yeah, I mean,
an alternative.
you're saying this none of this was even attempted to be even asked upon this judge because it was so far corrupt, because every piece of evidence that Henry Rosenthal would try to submit, like he found the credit card receipts, and back then the credit card receipts were the old, you put your credit card in the machine and you go psh, psh.
Oh yeah.
He got those for hotels and for the boutique that her dress was purchased at. Like, he got all this evidence and the judge wouldn't let him submit it into evidence. Like, it was so bad. I mean, it was just a complete railroad of injustice. Like, it was bad. He gave so many examples in this book of how corrupt this judge was. And there was no winning for her at all.
No, I agree. She was screwed.
So I don't even think the jurors would even
something that's interesting
could go into question anything, because there nothing was. I mean, it was ridiculous.
You're also talking about a 19-year-old up against all of these. Aren't just regular people. So we're not talking about a trafficking ring or a sex ring involving normal, regular, everyday adults. We're talking about adults that are very powerful people, very wealthy people, very influential people.
Yeah.
And, as we all know, even today, those are the people that seem to get away, with murder.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. So ultimately, she was found guilty of perjury, and they were not going to, I think it was actually 8 counts of perjury.
It was 8.
When it was all said and done, with all of the charges against her, it was going to be 200 years in prison. That is the sentence she got?
Well, no. Her sentence was 15 years. I think it could have been, had they actually added everything
it could
up,
have been 200. Yes.
But they sentenced her to 15.
I know, but she was facing 200 years, is what they said. She was facing 200 years in prison.
Well, I think they did that for a reason.
For perjury? Are you kidding me?
I think they did that for a reason, because you do that.
Nobody else is going to come forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who else is going to come forward and say, well, actually, I think this happened and I have a story.
Yeah.
They're going to keep their big mouth shut.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So ultimately then, she goes to prison, and
I think a lot of her time in prison was also in solitary confinement, which is interesting.
She said she spent over 2 years, I believe. Either right under 2 years or a little over 2 years in solitary.
Something else that I think should be mentioned is at least one of the people that recanted their story came out later and said, okay, I was forced to recant. Basically, I was scared into recanting my story by the FBI and other law enforcement Well,
and we can get into his story a little bit later, but just to kind of finish up Alicia's, so now it's going to go through, apparently, she kept saying that, when this judge was always sustaining everything and not letting anything go into evidence, his excuse would be like, well, catch it on your appeal. Catch it on your appeal. Like, okay, catch it on your appeal. So ultimately, they were set up to have her have an appeal go. Initially, then they were fighting it and not even going to let her have an appeal to this judgment. But eventually, then it goes to the appellate court. In the meantime, she's trying to get out on bail because she wants to ultimately go to school, and she wants to be let out on this educational leave or something like that, where they'll allow her to attend school, attend college courses. But she has to submit bail. Did you read how much her bail was?
No, I didn't.
$500,000. And she was not allowed to pay the normal 10%. She had to come up with $500,000 cash for her bail.
Seems reasonable.
For
crazy.
For a perjury conviction for a 19-year-old kid. $500,000.
Something else that's funny. So she ultimately did get the appeal, but
Yeah.
I also read, so the defense filed a whole list of motions, all denied.
Yep.
All denied because they said that you were 2 days late.
Yeah.
And the defense tried to say, well, we knew we were late, but we were also told that even if our motions were late, that they would be allowed as long as the prosecution was aware of the we gave the motions to them as well. And they had prior knowledge. And the judge is like, nah.
Do you know why they were late?
Why were they late?
Henry Rosenthal, her lawyer, had a heart attack, and he was in the hospital. And so he's in the hospital, and he knows these motions have to be filed. And so he calls the judge, and he's like, I just had a heart attack. I'm in the hospital. I need to have an extension. Like, I need to, like, he's like, okay, yeah, fine. Take it up with whatever, or as long as you notify the prosecution. And so he was going in that he had the judge's word that as long as I notified the prosecution, like, this is what's going on, it's going to be late, I'm in the hospital with a heart attack. So apparently the prosecutor was like, yeah, okay, whatever. But that's not actually what happened. The judge came back and said, well, I said it would be fine if they were late, as long as you notified the prosecutor and the prosecutor agreed to it. But you notified the prosecutor, but the prosecutor didn't agree to it. So therefore, oops.
Yeah.
So sorry.
Just, she never stood a chance.
So interestingly enough is that she came up with the $500,000. Did you know that?
I did not know that either.
She came up with the $500,000, and they were going to try to stop her from leaving, even though she came up with the $500,000. And then after she posted the bail, they were trying all these different things to try to get it, like, revoked, so to speak. I don't know how you pay bail and all of a sudden they can revoke your bail. I don't know how that would work, but they were trying everything they could. But, she talked about, well, my parents' house, was just a modest house, that even if we sold their house, it wouldn't be $500,000. So what actually happened is there was an entrepreneur that was following her story and following her case and believed her and posted her bail. This individual was from Grand Island, Nebraska.
Did it say who it was?
It did not say who it was. But this Grand Island entrepreneur was following her case and felt bad and went to a bail's bondsman and posted her bail for $500,000. I would be curious. He has it in the book here.
He has the name?
No, not the name.
Oh.
He has it. He said it was a entrepreneur from Grand Island.
I think it'd be interesting.
So it'd be really interesting to,
It would be interesting to talk to Nick. I have seen some interviews. So Nick has been on.
Well, I just Googled it.
What?
And it says the person who posted Alicia's bail was reportedly Michael Casey, a freelance writer.
Michael Casey would. Yeah.
Michael Casey was the one that was involved in her. He was the one involved in Boys Town. That's what he.
Involved with Boys Town.
Michael Casey was the one that wrote her the letter. He was kind of involved with Boys Town, but he was the one that wrote her the letter. That's the letter in the back of the book.
Yeah, well, that letter is to the legislature.
No, there's letters to Alisha from Michael Casey.
Yeah, sure. Okay. I was thinking of two different things.
He
did have
was
letters to her,
he
but
was trying to get her. He was in some kind of journalism or play productions, like he was a play script or something like that, and he was promising her things, and he was trying to. He wrote her this letter that he was going to get her a part in some movie.
I think in a play or something.
Or
like
a
that.
play, something like that. Yeah. So I don't know exactly. I don't know if he was like a scout for this ring or what part he played in, and didn't quite get into his part in this whole situation. But
I don't think he was a part of the ring, because the grand jury said that Michael Casey was a con man, because he was a investigative journalist who was also working on the Franklin story. And so they kind of made him look like he was a piece of garbage too. Whether he was,
but I don't know how they got into this relationship where he was writing her personal letters and offering her parts in a playwright, or I don't know.
I think while he was also investigating from a journalistic standpoint what was going on with the Franklin scandal, I think that's how he come across her name as well. And I think actually he found her before Gary Caradori did. And according to the grand jury anyway, which don't know if I can buy anything that they had to say, but according to the grand jury, he's the one that gave her name to Gary. Whether that's true or not, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
yeah, interesting. Well, Alisha, ultimately was let out on this, they call it work release. This was like education release. And so during this education release, she signed up for classes at the college. She took classes at St. Mary's. And she ultimately got a law degree.
Oh, she did?
Mm-hmm. So she thought, if they're going to keep coming after me, the only way that I'm going to fight them is if I learn the law. And so she started studying law, and she got a law degree. She owns her own business now, and I think it's a charity or a philanthropic type. I don't want to say business, but it's like a corporation or whatever you want to say, where I think it helps. She helps victims. But she served her time. She put up the bail, and I don't know that. I think there was a short stint that they put her back in prison, but then she got out again. I don't know the exact details of that, but yeah. So she never wavered. She lives a good life and is married, and
I would like to have a long form conversation with Nick. I've seen him do interviews on other, of course, bigger podcasts than this, but like with I don't know if he's been on Joe Rogan, but he has been on Sean Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
And he touches on it, but he doesn't spend like 2 hours going into detail on this specific case. But he talks about this case. He talks about Craig Spence. And I think he's worked on a lot of projects.
Yeah.
But sometimes he's kind of hard to listen to.
Well, definitely. Like in the audiobook, it's definitely dry.
Yeah. Well, I think he has so much going on. Like this case is pretty big.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people.
It's a lot of detail. A lot of
detail.
Mm-hmm. And he's got to introduce each. I mean, there's so many characters, so to speak, involved. he's got to get them introduced somehow and how they're relevant in this whole thing. And he ultimately does. I honestly feel like if I would listen to it a second time, then it would all click for me.
Sure.
And I would get through it a lot better, because then I'd be like, oh, okay, now I know who he's talking about. Okay, this makes sense. As I listened to it, I mean, I started listening to this how many months ago? And I'm just now finishing it.
Well, I haven't started on the book itself yet, because when I first got the book, and I would recommend the book to anybody. I think it's probably a great book, even though I haven't read it. The thing I like about it is the back, and I can't even tell you how many pages. It's a bunch.
Yeah.
But he has all of his reference material in there. So if you think, well, this might be I don't know if I believe what he says here, believe what he says there. Well, you can go to the back of the book, and all of the reference stuff is in there. So it's the actual, whether it be letters or documentation from the legislature.
Yeah.
Everything's in there.
So I started with the book that John DeCamp wrote called The Franklin Cover-Up. And I read that book. And that book was the original telling of the Franklin scandal. And I think then where Nick Bryant comes in and writes his book called The Franklin Scandal, he's basically taking the information from the book, from John DeCamp's book, and then he kind of takes the information that he finds from Gary Caradori, and then he finishes kind of what Gary Caradori started, is my take on it. And he researched this for years before writing this book, and talking to witnesses and finding witnesses. And I mean, he does corroborate a lot of information before he really says anything, because that's, ultimately his career is on the line. And so he wants to make sure everything's legit.
Before we go, one thing I'd like to say, that one of the reasons I think this is important is I think it gives you a pretty good idea, because everybody's familiar now with trafficking. Mm-hmm. Back then, probably not so much.
Right.
But it gives you an idea of how big they are, probably how hard they would be to investigate and prosecute, because a lot of the investigations, let's say even myself as working for a small agency, you might investigate something for a few months if it's a big investigation. This would take years, and evidence gets old. And there's so many witnesses. I mean, it would be extremely difficult. It would be extremely expensive. You would have to have probably a task force of law enforcement that was their only job, was just like this particular case, because it would take a ton of time and resources try and unravel. And then I can't imagine trying to explain it to a jury.
Yeah.
It would be tough. And you would have to have your shit together. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah.
But anyways, that's all I got for this one.
Yeah. Maybe we can spend the next one just kind of tying it all up in a little bow. And
yeah, we could talk about maybe just the rest of the witnesses. We can maybe go into, because I can tell you when I first looked at this, I was kind of skeptical, but the more you kind of see all of these little pieces and how they tie together, and how it becomes almost impossible for a group of 4 people to make the whole damn thing up. Mm-hmm. And not to mention, one thing I always want to fall back on is this investigation didn't start because of what Alisha said, and it didn't start because of what a Troy Bonner said or anybody else. It started with the Foster Care Review Board.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
something to think about if you think this whole thing's bullshit. It did not start with the kids.
Yeah.
That well, ultimately ended up in prison, at least the one.
I will say that if you read the last chapter of this book, it's going to all click. He kind of ties it up and is like, okay, basically he summarizes everything and where we got started. So,
Well, hopefully,
I mean, I'm saying that to you.
sure.
I am before our next episode. But
Well, I hope
you know,
that we can do that in the next episode.
as people are listening, I suggest, definitely. The books are hard, but if you're interested in really delving into the information, grab the Franklin Scandal or the Franklin Cover-Up, and I mean, the interviews are on YouTube. Also, you can
Sure.
find all those interviews too. Nick Bryant, he has a ton of interviews on YouTube.
Yeah, you can even go to the
Rusty Nelson, the photographer, Alisha Owen, Sandy Caradori. He has, they're there.
I would probably recommend the Sean Ryan
Yeah.
show and watch him on there. But anyways, that's all I got for today.
All right. See you later.
Later.
Bye.
Don't talk back unless you wanna talk. Don't talk back unless you wanna talk.